Welcome back, Lion Golf Academy members and guests, and today's a very special video. I figured we're getting close to the holiday season. Let's give you some gifts by answering some of your questions. So I put a post out there a couple of days ago asking you guys and girls to give me some questions about the golf swing, the theories, drills, cause and effect, basically anything to do with golf instruction. And we got some great questions to answer. Now I'm going to try and answer these questions from an instructor's point of view. I'm going to keep it real with you guys, and we're going to use a few videos of swings to try and explain the answers to these questions. But keep in mind, I am trying to answer this question from an instructor's point, and there might be some of you watching that disagree with my answers, but I am going to try and use some facts to back this up. And these questions range from all over the place, so I think it's a good group of questions for this first episode to try this out. If you do like this, hit that like and subscribe, share with somebody you know, as your support helps us send funds to needy children down in Cape Flats, South Africa for the Hillerhood Foundation to help these kids get golf in their life. But without further ado, let's go see what's on your mind. So the first question we have is from a longtime viewer and subscriber signed up for Doc Only. This is a great lead-off question because it is about practice and how to practice correctly. If you have followed my videos for a while, you understand that I'm a huge proponent of practicing without the golf ball. So his question is, are drills without balls worth it since you can't see the ball flights? And how do you know you aren't actually training bad habits? What general drills are good for slice or hook, but what drills would also be bad for each of those? Does swinging slower when with a lower power during range time help, or just train more bad habits? Well, that is a great question, and I'm going to lead it off with a little story time. So my academy is called the Lion Golf Academy for multiple reasons, but one of the main reasons, besides being one of my favorite animals, is the idea that a golf ball is like a lion and you have to tame this lion. So I'll give you an example here. Let's say I walk with my heels down first, and that is just how I know how to walk since I was a child, but for some reason I want to learn how to walk with my toes down first. Yes, it's going to feel very awkward. I'm going to have to do it very slowly and methodically think about my toes landing first and then my heels. I do this for 6 months and it feels pretty natural. But on the 6th month and one day, I'm walking along and this lion jumps out of this bush and starts to chase me. I would almost guarantee that I would forgo my toe down first and go straight to my heel down first because that is my natural habit. The same thing applies with a golf ball. So if you are using a golf ball for practice in full swing scenarios, you are most likely going to have your old motion whether you like it or not, because feel is not real. So in order to learn a new move and apply it to your golf swing, you are going to have to do thousands of golf swings without a golf ball to give you a fighting chance. Now I say that because it takes roughly 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions to create a new habit. Now let's say you have been playing for 20 years. How many swings do you have under your belt? Let's call it 200,000 swings. So for 200,000 swings, your body has ingrained a motion. Now for us to untrain that, it's going to take a hell of a lot of swings to undo it so that golf ball does not bring out the lion. In order to tame that golf ball, you are going to have to do thousands of repetitions without a golf ball in a nice slow controlled swing. Now if you are brand new and only played this game for a month and you only have few hundred swings in you, it's not going to take thousands of golf swings. It might only take 50 without a golf ball. It's such an individual case. There's not one way to say it, but in other words, if you played this game a long time, you have so much more work to undo than somebody that is brand new, which is why it's so important to start your journey in golf under care with an instructor who knows how to facilitate and use your body mechanics correctly. Now, in order to answer a question about drills of slicing and hooks, again, this is such an individual answer and it's not a cop-out. This is just how it works. Both slicing and hooking are affected by your path relative to your target, and then also your club face relative to your path. So if I have a student that has a rope hook, I need to see where their path is related to their target and then where their club face is related to the path and go from there. Now different students adapt to different types of drills. You would need to know the student's tendencies, which also lie into the body mechanics. Are they flexible enough? Can they understand the drill in case? And how can we relate that drill down to the golf ball for real golf ball time swinging? Now, for some answer I can give you, typically what I see for the person that has trouble slicing is lack of rotation. When we have lack of rotation, the arms are not behind you enough to come from the inside, so they're always approaching from a very steep over the top motion. So one quick way to do this is to get your range of motion to increase so you can turn. So have a look at your range of motion and see how that is affecting your path. And typically when we have a path issue, our hands and arms try to take over, and that gives us a two-way miss. For those that have a rope hook and a slice, it is probably a lack of turn. So Doc, there's your spot. I hope that answers your question somewhat, and I hope it gives everybody watching a little bit more in-depth knowledge to understand that there's no universal cure to anything, that you are unique as a fingerprint. Let's check out the next question. So the next question we have is from Kiwi Veritas, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. His question is, explain the concept of over the top from the inside. Now, over the top from the inside, when I first heard that, I said, what the hell is that? But after a quick Google search, let me give you an answer right now. On the screen we have Matt Fitzpatrick, who won the US Open not too long ago, and he has what is coined as an over the top from the inside. Now, Raymond Floyd had a bigger motion than this, and so when I looked it up, I was like, it just means he has a reverse loop. It's basically what it's saying, and that's what it is. So if we're going to draw the plane line, that lower green line, that's a long plane line. Look at the club face. So we're going to take this back up to about midway point. We can see the hands right up that shaft. You can see the club head is veering below the shaft here, and once we get to about midway there, we can see that the club shaft, we're going to draw this in Barney purple, we can see that club shaft is somewhat laid off. So at the top of the swing here, we can see that shaft is still in that same position. His arms are raised up, and he kept that shaft fairly laid off. Now watch what happens as he comes on down through. He's going to right that shaft right to the center, and so we see now his new shaft is actually over the top technically from where his backswing was. So it is technically over the top, but it's still into out. It's basically a fancy way of summing up a reverse loop. Think of Jim Furyk, but the opposite. Hope that answers your question. Not much to this question, really quick answer. If you need more clarification, let me know in the comments below. Alright, next question is from Zero Garth. It goes something like this. Wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts on the whole concept of getting shallow. Ugh, don't like that word. It seems like people love the idea of shallow, but confuse it with what is more accurately described as dumped under the plane or flipping underneath. Maybe tied to that point, what's your perspective on the pattern of trends in golf instruction? Great questions. Let's get to it. So you have to forgive the VHS quality and 8-track sound of this, but what we're going to look at is Bruce Litsky. Now, Bruce had a very unusual swing. He kind of had an over-the-top inside-out swing, and it's actually more common than we thought. But this also, we're going to talk about shallowing. Now, shallowing is a huge word that's going around as of late, and I think people are taking it way too far by changing their whole spine angles to get that club to be shallow. So there is a way to over-shallow the club, but here's somebody who still shallows the club from a very upright motion. So don't fall for shallowing, because we all shallow naturally. As long as you are utilizing your body close to correct, your club shaft will shallow because of turning and tilting. So let's go to the top of the swing here, and this will be kind enough to give us a little line at the very top, but that white line is not mine. You can thank NBC for that one. But what we're going to look at is the motion on the way down, and it all starts right about here. Did you see how the club just drops straight into the slot? Now you can see where the top position is. It is very upright. Arms are very high. The wrists are not bowed. They're not flexed. They look pretty neutral. It's kind of hard to see with about 4 pixels there. But the most important thing is look at the way the shaft will just drop down into the slot, and we're going to freeze it right about there. So we're going to redraw that club shaft. Now, if you take a look at where his spine angle is, this angle here is fairly close to 90 degrees. As long as it gets 90 degrees of your spine angle, you have naturally shallowed your club. Now that is plenty shallow. What I see sometimes nowadays is I see that club getting down here. Now anytime the club is below the plane so much, you are in trouble. You are going to hit that ground way before the golf balls. You are going to have to manipulate something to make sure that club gets out, and that's very, very hard to time. Now one way I see that people manipulate that club head is by losing their posture, because they all of a sudden drop that right shoulder so far down, and just just by dropping that right shoulder so far down, this club will tend to shallow, so you can still hold an angle. When your right shoulder is dropping so far down, you're getting so close to that earth really quickly, and you cannot save it. There's not enough time to do so you end up in trouble. So long story short about shallowing is do not search for shallowing. Most issues come from lack of turn on the way back. If you are steep on the top through lack of turn, no amount of shallowing can help you. You have to turn more to allow your hands and arms to get back behind you, so then you can drop that right shoulder and drive into the target. It's not a magic move. Now, the trends in the golf instruction world, we have seen this over and over again, much like the trends in the golf equipment world. Nothing is new in the golf equipment world. Nothing is new in the golf instruction world. They are changing terms to make it seem like it's new. Shallow, what was that called before? Flat. Thoracic side bend, what was that called before? Tilting. The more these words change, they just confuse the students, and all of a sudden I get these students coming to my lessons with all this verbiage, and I know that they are watching too much YouTube because only YouTube has this verbiage. And I cannot tell you how many people I see forcing a shallow, fighting rope hooks, fighting shanks, because it's the next trend on YouTube. Please stay away from trends. I am not a big fan of lumping people into a stack and tilt, one plane, two plane, single plane, square to square. Stack and tilt has been around since the invention of steel shaft. Rotation swing has been around for 400 years since the first club was created. Nothing is new. All I'm trying to do is teach you that you are individual. You are as unique as a fingerprint, just like a snowflake, and therefore your swing should be addressed as such. But I hope that answers your question. Let's get to the next one. Okay, this next question comes from Adava. What is the proper sequence of mass and pressure shift in the golf swing? I hear a lot of conflicting information, and I'm curious of your thoughts. So Adava, I'm assuming you're talking about weight shift, and if that is the case, I have been exposed to many instructors' points of views when the PGA Summit, when I go to the teaching summit, and I go to educational clinics, and I've heard it as well, just like you have. I've heard varying information that conflicts each other, and the problem really lies down to this saying, and I hate to be so brute force in the saying, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can technically have a reverse pivot and time your reverse pivot to hit the ball pretty successfully, but can you do it over and over? And is it good for your body? You can have a huge swaying motion that you can time correctly and hit the ball just as fine. Now, there are studies out there on the best top elite athletes and what they do. I've seen studies that their feet work opposite of each other. They're basically trying to spin their heels into each other, and that helps them turn through. I've also seen stats where the trail foot acts more like throwing a baseball. So what it comes down to, again, there's no universal way to do such a thing. You have to just look at your body mechanics and see how you can utilize your turn and your weight transfer efficiently, but it all stems down to your setup and your ball position. I personally try to teach my students more of a throwing motion because that is something that they're more used to using, and why would I go against their natural motion to teach them something else? Most people that I teach are not tour level quality athletes. They are the average Joes that have a life and have a family and have other hobbies, so they cannot really utilize their time correctly. So when they do practice, I want to give them field drills. So I will actually throw golf balls with them and see how far they can throw a golf ball and work with their footing that way. That is an avenue I go down first, and then I take it from there and see what their cause and effect is, and if their path and club face is affected by that motion. I know it's not exactly what you're looking for, but I hope that can kind of give you an idea of what an instructor should go through when trying to deal with the average Joe. Thanks for the question. Let's see the next one. The next question comes from Innovative Program School 7979. When you turn for the takeaway, do your arms move back towards your rear or out away from your body? That's a good question, and one that I hear more than you think. So to answer this question, I'm going to assume that your body's in decent shape. You have decent range of motion and you can turn adequately. If that is the case, then your body should basically just turn together. When I instruct some of my students, I try and focus on just establishing hip turn, because if your hips turn, typically your shoulders and torso turn with your hips, and along with that, your arms should just stay relatively neutral to the turn. They should not really extend outward because that can mess with your weight distribution, and they should also not pull inward because that can also mess with your spine angle and also weight distribution to your heels. So it really comes down to your setup, your ball position, your range of motion, and are you able to just turn your hips and keep things relative to that turn? Now there are ways to increase your width. One of those ways is to add more tilt with your shoulders, but that is getting to a dicey gray area where now you have to add some more manipulation based on that tilting. Now if you have a body that has limited range of motion, you have an injury, you're up there in age where your range of motions aren't what they were 20-30 years ago, then yes, you might have to feel like your arms and hands are pulling back behind you to make up for that turn. Something that could help you out is also closing your stance to give you a pre-made turn. So if you close your hips at address 20-30 degrees, if you just add 10 more degrees, you're already at the bare minimum. But in a nutshell, most of the students that I work with don't typically have that severe range of motion issues that they can't get the bare minimum. Bare minimum is 30 degrees of hip turn. So I want you to pretend you are taking your address position and just turn your hips. Keep your address position the same. We're basically taking our address position and moving it with the turn. Don't pull your arms back. Don't pull your arms out. Don't add tilt. Basically turn around your spine. And you should be far enough away from you where you can still use your hands and arms correctly, and they should still have adequate amount of room to do their job. Hope that answers your question. Let's get to our final question. This final question is probably in the top of most everybody that has hit a driver. This comes to us from Bruceford 9413. Thanks, Bruce, for this question. How do I decrease launch angle and change spin rate? So Bruce, reading this again, it says, how do I decrease launch angle? I don't know if you mean with a driver or with an iron. I assume you want to decrease the launch angle and change the spin rate with an iron. So I'm going to answer both of these. There are three basic ways that you can start to mess with launch angle and ultimately reduce or increase the spin rate. So let's just take driver off the bat. What we're going to do, there's three areas to do this. One, you can hit further up on the club face. So in other words, tee it a little bit higher and see if that'll help you with that launch angle. Number two is you can increase your loft of your driver. So in other words, if you have a 9-degree driver, take it to 11 degrees. It will help you increase that launch angle. However, it will also increase your backspin. So you need to know your backspin rate before you do that. Lastly, you want to increase your attack angle, which will help you increase your launch angle. Basically, what you're looking to do is hit up on the ball. So a quick way to do this is move your ball position out towards your left foot if you are a right-handed player and try to swing up on the ball. That's probably the quickest way you will do this, and it's going to change the dynamic loft of your driver to have a higher launch angle. So basically, if you have a 9-degree driver and you hit up on it about 5 degrees, you will have a 14 to 15 degree launch angle, and coming with that is a beautiful reduction in spin rate. Now you cannot forget the club shaft as well. Club shaft plays an important role. The flexion, is it a high kick point, mid kick point, low kick point? How much torque the shaft has, how light the shaft is, how long the shaft is. So there are multiple things you can do with the club alone that can help you decrease your spin rate. I had a shaft that was way too weak for me, and I went to a very stiff high kick point shaft, and it reduced my backspin rate from 4,000 RPM to high 2,000s just in the club itself. Once I was able to use that club correctly, I then placed my ball position further up, I teed it a little bit higher, and that reduced it down even more to the low 2,000s. So there are plenty ways to help you with launch angle and spin rate. Now for the irons, you are still looking at attack angle. You are still looking at ball position. Most of these things have to do with dynamic loft and static loft, how your loft changes at impact and how that affects your launch angle and your backspin. So keep that in mind. I hope that helps you. I'm not sure if it was sort of a driver or an iron. If you need more explanation, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate everybody giving me the questions. This was a lot of fun for me to do. It took a lot of time to do this. So if you do like this, please support us by giving a like, a subscribe, share, comment, whatever you want to do. Even in the comments, if you want to put it on good old Wichita, we'll take that as a positive. Thanks very much. I will see you next time. It's going to be our swing analysis on Raymond Floyd. Have a great night, everybody. Fairways and greens.